Hello everybody and welcome to Handmade Hero, show where we code a complete game live on stream. I have updated the GitHub with an issue list that we can turn over to Anna to fix the art. And this, I think, was an important thing because, she just gives us art assets. And at some point, we should just move the game over to her machine so she can run it too and work on things herself. But in the meantime, when we discover errors, we didn't really have any way to log them, and so they never really had a way to get fixed. Because if an artist has to fix them, but we're the people who find them, we need some communication channel there. And so what I did is I just used the issue list that we had on GitHub since we went through the trouble of setting up a GitHub. These issues marked with art on the side should be easy enough for her to just go like this and see just specifically what the art problems are so far. And that way we can just kick those over and have them fixed sort of asynchronously, and then we can update the art assets. So I went ahead and did that. These are the ones that I remember us encountering on the stream. I added them in there. If anyone can think of any that we did not list here that we've seen, feel free to add them yourself if you're on the GitHub, or just mention it in the chat and I'll add them when we get to the Q&A today. So I will, with that in mind, I will get started on what we're doing now. If I recall correctly, we stopped yesterday on what I think, well, it's either a bug or a missing feature. Let's put it that way. We have a particular art asset, and I will show you the art asset for those of you just joining us. We have a particular art asset that at least looks reasonable in like a viewer, right? And we look at this, and we looked at it lined up with a template as well, and we just look to see whether or not this thing had anything in other squares, and it doesn't. It's just these 4 squares of import for different directions of the flower. Now, they go in the wrong order. I already found a bug on that. But regardless, only 4 tiles should have been extracted from this 4x4. But what we actually saw when we looked is that 6 tiles were being extracted from the 4x4. And so something has gone wrong here. When I said either it's a bug or a missing feature, what I meant by that was either there's a bug, and the bug is that we're erroneously determining through some slip up in the code that there's actually content in cells that don't have any content. So that's an obvious bug, and we would need to figure out what's happening there, right? Or the other option is that actually this file does have some really alpha of 1 out of 255 or something in these squares. And if that's the case, then it's a missing feature. Because what we would probably want to do is we probably don't want to require the artist to be so diligent about cleaning up squares that have nothing in them that they can't have what is essentially invisible alpha in them. So we would probably want to do a thing that thresholds a square and says, look, if we don't see any pixels higher than 16 out of 256, and maybe even more stringent than that, we might even say, look, we want to see at least 64 different pixels, all of which have more than this or something, right? We might want to have some kind of a metric that's given the size of the square that we find, we want to make sure that the number of pixels we counted was some reasonable proportion of that square, had more than a nominal alpha. You know what I mean? And so that's what I mean by missing feature, is that if it turns out it's not a bug and the code's actually doing what we told it to do, it probably needs some improvement. So that we don't have to have such a persnickety, I don't want to have to constantly raid bugs back to the art and say, oh, go clean up this square that doesn't even look like it has anything in it. That's just annoying. It's annoying for everybody. It's annoying for me. It's annoying for the artist. Nobody wants that. So we can fix that type of thing in the code using a little bit of fuzzy detection, so we should. So the first thing I want to do is determine which of those two things is going on, or if it's or mysterious category 3, which is some other bug in the art pipeline is just spuriously creating those things, right? I mean, there could be that too. There could be the reason that we're getting 6 is due to something I have not contemplated. So we need to figure out which of those 3 things is going on, and that's the first thing I'm going to do. I think what I'd like to do here is say, look, we can load this thing in an external sort of way and look at what the alpha is in each square or something like that, and then, you know, give us some idea of what's going on. Now, I think that the easiest way to do that would be to say, look, we've got, right, we actually have a little a PNG like tester thing, right? Like this test PNG thing still compiles, if I remember correctly. I guess I don't really know if that's, yeah, right here. We still compile our little test PNG here. And that test PNG allows us to, yeah, it allows us to load one image in and then write out a bunch of images like the RGB and the alpha. So what I can do there is I can have something that writes out an alpha bitmap that's like, let's say like thresholded, right? So if I want to, I could take and anywhere that there was alpha, I could, if there was any alpha at all, I mean if it's not 0, I could write it as full white. You know what I mean? And then that would show me anywhere that there was any possibility of detection of the image. So let's do that. All right. So in here, you can see we have the arg count here, and we do these write-outs. With this REPL A, I'm going to do a pixel op threshold A, and I'm going to introduce one of those up here, which is threshold A. When this gets written out, I will test it. Like this. And down inside the code, what we'll do is after everything is done, right, where we do the replicate alpha and all that stuff. Well, I guess actually we probably do it earlier. Here where we do mul alpha and repl alpha, right before that, I think what I'll do is do if thresh. What I thought I had? That's great. Don't ask me how I typed that in. There we go. What I'm going to do is just say, all right, every time we get that, let's go ahead and do a thresh A on it. And that'll just be something that we have. I guess we put these in sort of a, reusable section here. I don't really, I don't think I actually want that to be the case. So probably what I'll do is, I think I'll take this code here, and I'll just put the threshold version in here. Thresh alpha, we'll do it like that. And what we'll do is we'll threshold the alpha by extracting it. So the same way we're doing it here, we don't actually need to extract the RG and B here, right? Because we're not actually going to use them differently. So we only really need to extract the alpha, like so. And then what we want to do is say if the alpha is anything at all besides 0, then it equals full alpha. So we're just going to threshold it directly up to 1. Then when we reset this, we just need to combine it with the original, like so. But remember, the original potentially has some alpha in it. So we could, do that to mask it off. But remember, the only thing we're doing here is thresholding it. So really, we don't even have to do that, because whatever the high bits were of C that were the alpha, we're just going to either leave them the same, in which case the OR does nothing, or romp them with FF, in which case we don't care what they were, they all get set to 1. So really, this is all we needed to do. There isn't anything else to it. So I think that's it. Now, if we want to do a threshold of the alpha, in theory, now that we've recompiled test.png, I should be able to do that. Let's go ahead and try it. So if I go ahead and load out of Handmade Sources base game art, that I believe was item hat 03. So here I can do, just a wtemp hat3 rgb.bitmap wtemp hat3 alpha.bitmap. And in theory, we should get something that we can view now, right? So here's the RGB from the hat, and that looks about right. And hey, that looks pretty suspicious there, doesn't it? And then here's the alpha from the hat. What it looks like to me, so it looks like the alpha is actually clean, meaning I don't see anything in there, right? You can see that this did threshold it, right? All of these parts that were previously fuzzed are not fuzzed anymore. But the RGB is there, right? There's some RGB happening, like right here. There doesn't seem to be any in any of the other places, so I'm not sure about that. But at least that tile does have them. So what I'd like to do is say, let's go check to see where that data actually was coming. Like, what I suspect we probably have is that alpha channel is probably set to not actually be there. So it's eliminating the image, but the RGB that's there is getting detected as valid, right? So inside import, if I go in here, and let's see, we've got, I don't need a right image. It's this right here, probably. So that's down sample, process multi-tile. So this is the detection code to see whether or not we're going to extract one of these. And inside here, you can see that we are just looking at only the alpha, as far as I can tell, right? At least, yeah, I mean, so this is looping over it, right? Here you can see it. It's using min and max looping over the alpha like so. So that seems fine, meaning it doesn't look like we're using the RGB at all there, right? So I'm not sure. I don't know why we are having that issue. So I'm going to have to step through this code because it looks like, I mean, just from doing this analysis, I don't see... I don't see any reason why we would be picking that up, even though there is some there to be picked up in the square that we picked up. The alpha value is not, there isn't alpha there, so there isn't alpha there, so I don't really know. That's a tough one, because you would think, I mean, based on the pathology of the bug, it seems like what I would have expected to see here is testing source C by itself, right? And then you would have seen something where the RGB values got, were what was triggering the indication that there was something in the grid cell. So I don't know about that, and I think I'm just gonna have to step through because that's really my that's all I've got. I don't have another theory that comes to mind. Looking at, if I open this up with the GIMP, here we go, and I take this is the item overlay, so I can see exactly what's going on in terms of grid squares. There's that overlay. I'm going to change this to multiply so that you can see through it. Or I'm going to try to. There it is. So you can see here that these all lie entirely within the grid squares except for this one. This is the other square that was getting exported. However, I will admit there was one other square that did get exported and it's not showing up here. So it is true that really, I guess even this I shouldn't have really expected because there isn't any indication of why the other grid square would have gone out. Just if you bear with me for a second here, if I load up tab view, so inside the base game, and we look at the asset listing. So, you know, when we imported the item list there, here it is. When you look at what we're seeing for import list, you know, the import list for it, here we go. So you can see that 20212223, which is here, 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 and here, that's this row, and that's correct. 21, which is this line here, that's this square, and that would have been a dead giveaway, and I would have expected to find, well, I looked and, you know, would have expected to find that to be the case. But it is true that 33 is also marked as having something in it, and that doesn't have any indication of why there would be something there. Looking back here, you can see like there's nothing in it, right? So I guess I'd have to admit my theory just isn't very good anyway, because why would fixing this fix the lower corner? So something else is still wrong. Somehow this piece of code is getting tripped up, and I'm not exactly sure how. Looking at the image width and height here, I'm assuming these are all set reasonably, but I don't know, maybe there's some kind of a padding problem. But I don't think we even store a stride for these, so none of the code would work properly if there was some kind of a padding problem. So I've got nothing. So I think what we're going to have to do now is I'm going to have to force process multi-tile import to get called. And I'm going to have to force it to get called on this particular file so that we can look and see what actually is going on. Now, it's possible, just looking at it, I might be able to cheese out and do the following. I'm not going to promise that I can, but I'm going to try, because if I can, this will be an easier way to debug it. If we copy process multi-tile import in here, and we get rid of all of this other stuff, so we're only saying here is the image, like this, we should be able to run this again. If we know that this is always, these array counts here, I think they're set to 16 by 16 normally, right? And then, you know, all of this stuff, I mean, this can just be a printf, right? Because this is a routine that, you know, just prints stuff out. So if I'm lucky, I may be able to just run this directly in the PNG importer and have it tell me what it thinks is going on. When we do this nonsense here, it doesn't require any access to the art asset system. So in theory, all of this stuff can still happen. And yeah, I think we're good to go. So this way I can debug it in a nice controlled environment that doesn't involve us having to run anything else. It'll also allow me to verify it externally so that then we can see, well, hey, if it doesn't fail here, maybe it's some other problem deeper into the art system that we should know about. So I don't care about any of this because we don't need to know any of this. So really all that has to happen is now I just have to say whether or not we would have extracted this tile, right? Because we, you know, if we got in here, we would have done so. And so then what we want to say is this stuff here is the extraction. So it's like that, I think. And then I can just literally keep this math as it was being done previously, and then get rid of all of this. So this would tell me, you know, exactly what happened. In theory, I can just compile it. I don't think there's anything that it depends on at all, right? So now I could just call process multi-tile import, or maybe we'll call it test multi-tile import. And so then here, when we're actually doing, after we do the load, we can do the test, and we just pass this image, and that's it, right? And that should do it. So now if I come back and rerun this line of code, this test PNG line, I should be able to see what it thought it was extracting, right? And so you can see that this is great. This is fantastic. You can see that it does actually do 6 extractions. That means the bug does reproduce outside of the art pipeline, which should give us all we really need. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so I guess the next question is, how do we want to debug this? First of all, I think the extraction code should probably have in it which x index and y index it was actually doing. So maybe something like this, where we can say, all right, x index, y index. That way we can get some sort of a, you know, easy for us to understand, and it would also match what's in the tab view, just so we can see which one's the wrong one. So if we look here, we know that that's correct, these are correct, and then this and this are wrong. You know what I'm saying? Now, if you look at where these are, they are tiny, right? They're very small. I will print out the dimensions here as well. So if I did, do we have, I think we've got a rectangle 2. I think that has a bunch of stuff in it that we might want there as well, although those are floats. I don't know if we do a rectangle 2i. We do. So we could do one of these rectangle 2i's here. I don't know if we've got to get dim for it. It looks like we don't. So yeah, less useful. Anyway, maybe we should make one. Let's actually make this rectangle 2i here. Guess maybe I'll do it this way. There's the min on both. Here's the max on both. Oops, that's no good. And now we can just do extract min x, extract min y, extract max x, extract max y. And now I can print out some size information. So here we can do extract max x minus extract min x and extract max y minus extract min y. And that I just wanted so I don't have to do that math in my head. So what you can see is these are like garbage little tiny things. It says 17 by 17, right? And so where that's coming from, I have no idea, but I want to find out. Somehow there's this sort of bogus stuff coming out of here. And what's weird is when you look at the values that we're getting in the PNG, we could say, oh, maybe our PNG parser was busted and it's writing out some garbage there. But we looked at dumps of it and we didn't see anything. Now, we did see something in this square, but we're not looking at the RGB, so that shouldn't have been a problem. And we didn't see anything in this square, right? There was nothing there. So it does seem like, especially if we just concentrate on this one, this 3-3, we see nothing there, and yet we're getting this extraction, getting triggered. The fact that they're both 17 by 17 does sort of suggest that we have some kind of a fancy bug happening. Like maybe we're looking in the wrong place somehow when we do some of the source pixel advancing or something. Like this code is slightly off, or I don't know, right? But it does seem like we've got something squinky happening here, and we need to get a little bit more insight into what it thinks it's extracting in these cases, right? Now, fortunately for me, I can just do that, right? We've got a thing that right here that's like, hey man, why don't you write this out? What I should be able to do is write out the alpha channel, I could write out both if I wanted to, right? I could write out each of these things as an extraction test and say, look, show me what you thought the pixels were. It's just a reasonable start. So in here, if I'm going to do an extraction, what I would want to do is get that width and height. So in here, I'm going to say this is the width and height that I already computed for purposes of printing it out. And I'm just going to keep it so that I can use it in here. So here's the extract width and the extract height. Now, I need to take that info stream so if there's a place to dump errors. I probably should have done that to begin with because I could have just used that as the place, and I could have used outfs in the first place. But I think we just want to do that, right? And so here where it's going to take that info stream, I'll just pass that along. Like so. And then when it does this nonsense here, I just need to give it a name. So when we're doing this, right, what I can do is say, all right, I've got a little buffer here and a little buffer here. Let me go ahead and sprintf into those. Nothing interesting happening here. And again, this is just cheesy nonsense, nothing good. So I need to get the extract pixels pointer here. This is going to be the location where if you were going to start, this is where you would move to. The problem for me is, unfortunately, in order to do that, I would need a stride for right top-down image RGBA. And what you can see here is that this doesn't actually take one. So this needs to actually condense this needs to sort of do that extract. And again, I think, because this was actually doing extract image here, right? I suspect what I could do is, again, just keep calling that. So if I look at extract image, oops, this code right here, it does the alpha multiply, which I don't really want, unfortunately, but I can use it. So if we take this and get rid of that, what I can probably do, well, and you know what? I guess we have that, so I could just do this. I could literally do it exactly this way. What I could do here is just don't do this, right? So instead, it would just be copy directly. And leave it at that. So if I want to do that, I need one more thing. I need to be able to pass the memory arena in here just to keep this flowing exactly the way it was before. So that would look like this. And then we could just call it the way we were calling it before. So if we wanted to do that, then this becomes even easier because now we have an image U32 here, which is this is the the extracted image. And then we would just say, all right, extract image, extract min x, extract min y, extract max x, extract max y. And I don't actually remember the other things this takes. So it needs the source image, which was what? Just image? Yeah. So it takes the source image, the rectangle, and the temp arena, and that's it. Then the extract width and height is actually, now we can just say extracted width, extracted height. This doesn't need to occur anymore. These can happen, and then here we just say extracted width, extracted height, extracted pixels. So there's no other stuff there. And we may need to cast that though. So, right. So that needs to be U8 pixels. What was it? It was a U32. So that needs to go like that. There we go. Okay, so at that point, I think we're good to go. We'll find out. But now we should get like just a local dump of those files, in theory, right? So here they are. It's like one alpha dot. So they both think there's literally one alpha dot just sitting there. And so now we're left, unfortunately, still with a conundrum because we didn't see an alpha dot there. But I guess we can make sure by looking at this maybe in a real program, because, you know, you can't really trust Microsoft with something like that. Lo and behold. So there is one alpha dot there. And one alpha dot there. All right. So, we almost need to make this bloom out the alpha or something. Because that does, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. Anyway, we saw those, it is exactly what I thought it was at the start. It's hard to detect those. What I'm going to try to do now, I think, is just change that detection routine to be more forgiving. And so what I think we want to do here is say, hey, when we do the multi-tile, we probably want to just prevent things that are too small, just in general, right? So when we do multi-tile extract, so this code here, what we want to do is when we're doing this, we then do like the expansion here. We probably want to say, look, is the minimum, is the minimum size exceeded or not, So let's figure that out. What we would do there is say, first of all, the min x has to be less than the max x, and the min y has to be less than the max y, right? So it would, it has to be it has to have found something. And the only problem is, so the way we're doing it here, like if you look at this with the min x and the max x and stuff, there isn't really a way to add some to that. So I'm not sure exactly how we want to do that. I think what we'd want to say is something more like this. So what I'm doing here is I'm just doing a computation of the length that is safe. So it's just saying, or at least somewhat safe. It's saying, look, we're going to start with zeros here. If you found something, determine what the width is. And then I'm going to say if test dim x is greater than, let's say, 4, and test dim y is greater than 4, then off we would go, right? And, the pixel count, you know what I'm thinking? Maybe that doesn't even matter now that I think about it. Maybe I don't need to do this at all. What if we just counted the number of pixels? So if in here we just said, look, how many pixels are there? Then when we come in here, I want to see the valid pixel count is greater than 16, and right, the min x max x, right, has something to say about that, right? And then I think we probably also want in here, I want probably a second layer, which is that once we know that the thing has area, we don't really need to test that, I guess, because that would just automatically happen. And so this really is just this. So I think we also maybe want the number of pixels to have to be properly proportioned to the area, possibly too. So the bigger the area, the more pixels should have to be filled up to a certain number, right? Because we'd really like to say, look, if there's not like 128 pixels, this probably isn't valid. But if it was some small little thing, then maybe that's fine, like for the fonts or whatever, right? So maybe what I'll do is say something like pixels per area, right? And then we'll say if the valid pixel count is greater than 8, which is like the lowest number we're going to accept or something, or 4, I don't know. And then what we want to do is take the area. So we would say max x minus min x times max y minus min y, right? So we do the multiplication to find out what the area is there. And then we would want to take the valid pixel count and sort of like determine how many pixels per unit area we have covering us, I think. So then we would have, oops, then we'd have, I don't know what that just did. Don't want to know. Thank you, Windows, for whatever that awesome thing that just happened was. Our pixels per area would want to be the valid pixel count divided by the area, right? And so what we would want to say is, look, you know, something like this. If the pixels per unit area is not sufficient, then it's probably just noise, right? And off we go. So the problem with this is that if you just had like a little splotch, we wouldn't necessarily be able to tell that, you know, that wasn't what you wanted. But then again, you know, fonts and stuff, they don't really go in here for the most part. So I feel like, because they get generated by a separate path, they're processed as a single tile import. So I do wonder if maybe it would be okay to be more stringent, right? And say that like at least 25% of the area, at least, you know, I don't know. But saying 10% of the area has to be covered should be enough. And since we have to have more than just one pixel, that would get rid of the case that we're looking at now. I just don't know if we're really still, we still probably aren't quite testing as stringently as we need to in the pixels per area department. Because like, for example, in this case, a little 3x3 filled solid pixel would pass. But maybe it should? I mean, I don't know. So I'm going to claim that that is what should happen here. And I'm going to see if now we can reprocess our art assets and if they all pass correctly and see, you know, see if that actually works. If that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, the only thing I think of is that this maybe really should be more like 16, you know? So I'm going to say 16. And I also don't know if this needs to have a secondary counter that's like actually stronger pixels. So pixels with an alpha value that's higher, you know, that's like more than, say, 16 or something like that. We may want to do that as well. Like... So maybe we would do something like this. And so this way we would say, look, there's a solid pixel count and a valid pixel count. Valid pixel count just lets us know we saw anything. Solid pixel count is sort of separate, right? So in here where we've got, oops. In here where we've got the alpha production, what I'd like to do is say like alpha equals shifted. So we'll shift it down. We'll see if there's anything there. If there is something there, then we will look at it. And this will only increment if the alpha is greater than 16. That's going to be our alpha threshold, right? The magic number is 16. Everyone knows it. And so in here, we're going to look to see if we got any region at all. If we did, we're going to look at the area that was covered by that region and see whether or not the solid pixel area actually was reasonable, right? I think that's about it. It's not a great routine, but hopefully that'll get us started. Okay. So if I now run an asset rebuild, so let's suppose that we go in here. I'm going to also, inside test PNG, I'm going to if out this code now. Just to leave it the way it used to work. So what I want to do now is just go back in and have it do a full rebuild and see if it can import everything like it's supposed to. So if I go to Handmade data, and we just del base game.hha and intro cutscene.hha. So now there's nothing left, right? It's gone. There's no game data whatsoever. If I now force it to actually, let me load up Remedy here. If I force it to run and rebuild everything that it had, there we go. What does it do? Right? Does it actually grab everything properly, or did I, horribly ruin it? We'll see. I love how Linux just initializes a mouse, it's on, it's plugged in, it's powered up, but forget it. We can't read that mouse. Why? Because we're Linux, and we don't read mice. Alright, so I think this is where we were, actually, so it looks like it did read everything properly. But we want to get rid of the cook thing so that we can look at the old asset and see whether it got imported properly. So inside the where we actually create the player, we want to go ahead and remove the part where we added that we were a cook, because we're not a cook. And now we can run and see what's up with that. All right. So that fixed our problem. I'm not sure that code is really all that great, but it's at least better than it was, and so now we have at least some protection against garbage alpha pixels that just sneak through, causing issues that we can't see. So that's good enough for now. We may need to revisit that code later because it's sort of just a sort of arbitrary heuristic that we just kind of pulled out, and so it's not really something that's robust enough probably to last us the entire time. But for now, we're going to call that good. So, all right, we got to do some thinking now. I think we're at the point where it's time to start doing entity work. Because I don't think there was anything else that I had to do or wanted to do here. Yeah, I don't think so. I might, before I do the entity work, I might, maybe, possibly, want to go ahead and... well, actually, you know what I do want to do as well? Is I want to turn off all these rectangles. Let's go in here. So what I'd like to do is, why did that not? Oh, weird. Just took a while, I guess. So what I would like to do now is I'd like to place some furniture, I guess, would be the next obvious thing to do. And then after that, I'd like to go address the entity system. Like, the reason we need to upgrade a couple things in there now, because we want to do stuff like be able to change our body to a cook body without changing our head to some other head as well, right? So we have some things we need to do there that we haven't really addressed. And that will allow us to create our orphans properly as well. So there's a bunch of stuff like that we'd like to do. I suppose another thing that we might want to do here is also like set up the rest of the orphan heads and bodies so that they have their snap points and that stuff. We also need to think about scaling. So we just have a lot of work to do. Because we're sort of opening up a bunch of world creation sorts of stuff, and so then there's just tons of work we can do there. All right, so everything else seems to be looking fine, and of course we have a nice flower on our head now, which is always a plus as well. And let me just make sure that like these guys are still hopping around. They are. They never set their facing direction. They should. Is there a reason they don't set their facing direction? Or we're just being lazy, I'm assuming. Inside brain here. Where's the snake? So when it actually does the transactional occupy, like... I think we would want to do this, right? We want to take that delta and do the atan on it, I think. Why our atan2 doesn't take a vector, no idea. Yeah, there we go. So I don't know why they weren't doing that to begin with. I also don't know why this guy can hop diagonally, because that doesn't make any sense. So this is probably totally wrong as well. What we probably should be doing here is saying, look, if the delta x is greater than the delta y, then it's x, otherwise it's y. You know what I'm saying? So it should be something like, you know, whichever one's greater, then the delta y equals 0, and the delta x is 0 here. Something like that. You know what I'm saying? I also don't know why this is why this isn't normalized. So this was just, I think this is just crap code we typed in, because no one would write that. I don't know why anyone would write that. But that's what it should have been, right? And so now it should only be able to hop vertically or horizontally. Like, you're not allowed to hop diagonally, so I don't know why. This was probably from a time period where we hadn't necessarily said that that was so, or something. I don't know. So now you can only hop, it can only hop along the grid as it should. And, you know, it can go around and have a little party and whatever else it wants. But anyway, it looks like all of those are working fine. And sorry I didn't quite explain what I was doing there, but I didn't really care about that code. I just wanted to not leave it in a weird state. It just, this was picking a random direction, but it also ends up with a random length. And we don't really need it to have a random length. We just need a random direction. So I made it so it would basically threshold and say whichever one was greater, don't go diagonal, so just either go x or y. And then once you zero out the one that's lesser, normalize it so that it's going to be 1 in one of the 4 cardinal directions. This code we probably will have pulled out at some point to a like get random direction that'll just give us one of the 4 cardinal directions, right? But for right now, I just wanted to clean it up in place so it wasn't sitting around being crappy. I don't remember how we got in here. It wasn't this way, was it? It was the other way. Yeah. We need to put in some punching code so we can punch these guys because they're kind of annoying. But yeah. Again, that's gameplay stuff. It's not really my domain. All right, so I think all that stuff's fine. And now what I want to do is I would like to make a I would like to take some time now and figure out like how we want to place furniture. Probably, I think that's what I want to do. The other thing I want to do is make sure that entities can have multiple. I have a strategy that I want to try for making entities have more flexibility with how the tags are set. There's a way that I think I want to do that. That I want to try. I'm not sure if it's going to be correct or not. How much time do we have is maybe the best way to look at that. So I think we have 45 minutes left, probably. So assuming we have 45 minutes left, what I'd like to do is do the furniture, I think. So inside room gen, I want to be able to place like just an inanimate object. And I don't really think that we need separate entity brains or anything for this because it's literally just an entity that sits there. It doesn't do anything. It just occupies a square so that that square can't actually have anything on it in terms of walking or anything, right? So I think in order to do that, what I would need to do is when we place monsters, so inside room gen, we've got stuff that places monsters sometimes, right? Well, I guess where is that? That's like in the here, right? Find place to put entity, right? So that's where we're going to place these entity groups. That I think is how we would do it. And there's a couple things that we're going to have to do later. I'm not probably going to do them now. I'm going to let them fail, and then we'll deal with it later. But what I want to do is place furniture using this system. I think that will actually allow furniture to block exits, which we don't want it to do. And so we will probably make that be something that we add to the checking here when it's actually placed, and we'll go from there. So I don't remember how to use any of these systems because, of course, we haven't used them in a really long time. But when we actually push these on inside the gen code, which I think is in here, anyone? Here it is. So when we do this stuff, right, you can see us, here's place cat. It goes through the options for where cats can be, right, and adds them in. So I think the same is true for furniture. So we can really just, when we're placing things, we can just place furniture as a pass that comes after. I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. I don't actually know. We could just do it at the time as well. Maybe that's a better idea. So maybe in here what we want is really this, right? We want this code to just place it in a room. So, you know, inside create orphanage, here we added all these rooms, and maybe inside the main room we want to add some furniture. So, like, yeah. Like this. So this thing is a chair. It's facing some direction. This is going to have to be the function that adds that thing. Why isn't add orphan? Shouldn't there be add orphan as a function? Oh, I bet those are in the energy gen. Those were callbacks. Yeah, you can see them. Unfortunately, the jump call doesn't know. It doesn't understand the macros here, so it can't know where those are. So I think what we have here is like add cat, right? It just puts a thing on there and it doesn't have a brain. That's what we want. So I think we want something like this, which is like, all right, this is add scenery, I guess. Maybe we'll call it add obstacle because it does like place itself onto the thing that it's standing on. Probably, I don't know. So it's going to be something like that. And it has the collider on it. It doesn't have, you know, anything here. It's just scenery. And so all of that should be the same. In this connect piece to world thing, we would need, yeah, this would be the same, and that doesn't have to happen. So it's really just this. So I think this is add obstacle. We say it's a chair. We say this is the facing direction. Here's where we're placing it. We add the entity in. And that should be it. So I think that's all. I don't think we need any of the other code because the other code was there for to handle other aspects of it. All right, so what is the problem here for add entity? By the way, it takes a gen and an entity creator. Add obstacle is one of those, and gen is a world generator, right? Oh, result is not that. So add entity returns a gen entity there. So we need to do this. Something like this. Maybe this. That might take care of all of it, actually. So I think that's it. And then when I run, I don't know if we actually get a chair or not. I tried to put a chair in the main room. Since we don't have any sophisticated layout code right now, it should just be in the upper corner, or the first place it can be, and it actually is. There it is. And of course, it blocked the the entrance. Whoops. So that lets us place furniture everywhere. We don't actually have the different directions of furniture, so I should probably use the only direction we actually have, which is to say that well, I'll leave that in for now. That it should be facing the other direction. So now we need some way of actually placing this stuff in some way that makes sense. This may require us to have more of an explicit layout. Not really sure how we would want to do that, because I think probably when we're creating rooms, we're going to want to lay them out by some various game design criteria. And so, you know, here you can kind of see there's our, right, there's our chair there. So we want to be able to do stuff like place those in a way that makes more sense, and I'm not sure exactly how or where we want to do that. We have to think about more about like what's going to be required for gameplay to have that happen. And yeah, I would like also to be able to control the size a little more easily, because for example, you know, the chair is too small probably at the moment. It should really be the whole size of the square. Inside the add obstacle call, like there's the sizing. There's a couple different ways we can do that. We could just leave it at 1.0. I don't really know what the best way to do this would be. We could leave it at 1.0, and if we do, then the way that we would adjust the size would actually be like encoded into the placement point. So for example, we would go like this and say, oh, this thing, right? Its default placement size is on here, right? And then we would size it up to however big it was, and also we would place it like in the square, right? And maybe that's the right thing, so everything's just 1.0 by default, and you scale it up in there, right? But again, like I don't really know exactly how we want that to go, so I'm not sure yet. But something like that. And so then, you know, if... Oops. That's not what I wanted. I exited the game. Also, that's wrong. That's not our title screen. We got to add a different query, it looks like. Does the rest of our stuff work okay? Yeah. So the rest of the stuff works just fine. So I think our title screen doesn't have the right query on it anymore. Let's take a look. Shot index 1, layer index 1, title screen. So yeah, if we go to cutscene, I think it's still using the old query for when we didn't have a separate thing for the title screen. So we probably want that to, yeah. So that should now actually pick out the title screen properly. And, you know, we can add more layers later. There's only one layer for the title screen right now, but that's what it should have done. Because remember, we added a tag for that. I guess we never went in and actually did anything about it. So, yeah, much better now. All right, so this is getting there. Now we're able to drop things in pretty easily. Maybe that scale should just always stay 1.0 and then the alignment points adjust it. That does seem like a pretty good way to go. Um, so yeah. Uh, I guess I don't really know what to do next. Um, we've got a ton of time left. So I don't know if that means I should go in there and actually start the furniture layout stuff. I just really don't know. Hmm. All right, Handmade here's over. I can't think of what to do next, so we're done. Yeah. So I don't actually know what we should be doing now. The next two things to start on both seem bigger than stuff that we would want to start at the end of the episode. Uh, Crumpets. So because yeah, we either want to start doing layout for stuff that goes into the world, or we want to upgrade the entities to have the tag problem fixed. And I don't, um, yeah, I don't know about either of those. So, you know what we could maybe do instead is how I turn those rectangles off. Maybe we should go in and put in a little UI for turning on and off debug overlays or something like that, because it does seem like the kind of thing that we do pretty often here. Um, so there's that. I could also go make some tree. I could extract the trees, and then we could put in some trees. That seems like it might be a good idea. I don't know. I would like to see how the trees look. Let's put in some trees. I don't know. I thought we were going to have more work to do today than it turned out we did. So that was a, sometimes programming, you get a bug, it takes you forever, and so, you spend a lot more time than you think, and then other times you're just like, oh, all that stuff just worked, so I guess we don't care. So, yeah, if I wanted to get the trees in there, let's look at that. Inside Handmade sources, in the base game area, so of the stuff that we didn't do, right, here we got the temp chairs that I did. Oh, I should ask for the chairs in different orientations, perhaps. Well, we can always leave that for later, I guess. I could put some lamps in. Let's put lamps and trees in, just cause. All right, so in here we've got some trees. I don't really know what to do about the trees. The problem is about how we're labeling them art-wise. And, I guess there's like destroyed versus snowy, I guess. I don't know. So there's kind of two axes there. And I don't really have a strong opinion about how those should work. So we'll just do our best, I guess. If I load up the item template, and I say, all right, for the item template, and you know what I should do too. Let's go hog wild here. Let's just go hog wild. If I go back here, I could just say like that there's templates in here, right? So that our templates are all in the same place, which kind of seems like a good idea to me. So, character template. There's no other templates, are there? So let's just go back here. And we'll say inside sources, underneath templates, there's character template. So I've got these two templates. I go ahead and open this one up into the GIMP. And then I'll go grab out of base game art this tree thing, open with this, convert, I guess. And so if I didn't want to do that, did I? Open as layers, item template. So if okay, nope, I take it back. I did want to do that. So if I go over here and I grab some of these out, so let's say I grab this tree, okay. Let's say I grab this tree and I paste that in there. And then we just pretend that these axes are what I just said they are. So damaged is on one end. So like... I don't know. And snow covered is on the other. So if it's something like this, and then we say, okay, that's my tree. Like scenery, or I guess this actually needs to be, since it's going to have a different sort of labeling system, I guess I want this to be some other word besides scenery. This is like an outdoor or something. I don't really know. So it's like outdoor, it's like an outdoor tree. Or it might just be, yeah, I don't know. I almost don't want to do it because if we just use the other thing, we could just get away with not having. So maybe there's just like a damage, but you know what? So I'm gonna take that back. I'm gonna say that we just have the snow covered going this way, maybe. So the variant is just that. Or maybe it's just a separate one for each of them, so there's just a couple different variants. I don't know. It would only be the top row. So I think maybe that's what I'll do. So I think what I'll do is say, look, there's going to be one for each of these. So I'll just like put them up like this on top of themselves. Oops. Right. And then I'll just save them out separately. So like this is just going to be damaged tree. This is like a pine tree, right? Or an evergreen. And then this is snow covered. And then this is just regular. That seems good for some definition of good. And I don't know about these guys. exactly. So let's just start there. Inside the base game tag file here, I want to go to where we were like defining the scenery there. And I'll just say like, hey, scenery, evergreen, PNG. And this is like, you know, tree, evergreen, or something like this. And we'd have 3 of these. There was like the damaged one, and there was the snow one, right? I think this is what I called them. So evergreen damaged, evergreen snow. And so we need tags for those out in here. So I don't know if we've got snow as a tag yet. Tag snow. So we need those tags, and I guess we could call like the other kind of tree deciduous. I don't want to have to spell that. But that's about it, right? And that way we can just sort of set those tags, and then if someone wants to access them, they can, right? So that should import those. They should work as is, and then inside, like the room gen, where it was placing walls before, you know, you can see. Oh, we even have an add. We have an add lamp call. Interesting. We should put lamps in. There's a call for it. So what we want to do here is say, look, the places where we were going to put walls before, we don't put walls when it's not a room. So if it's outdoors, we like skip that. And you can kind of see like, all right, here's the connection stuff. Here's adding the entities. Here's the wall height, blah, blah, blah. And so what happens here is you can see you've got a thing that actually does the tag wall, tag wood stuff, right? And it looks like the way we're doing that right now is if you're on the boundary, the wall height goes up. We set the on boundary tag if you're outdoors to like not be there, right? But I think that's actually not quite what we want to do. So what we actually want to do is if we look at that on boundary, right here, this code is like if we're outdoors, we would place a tree. Otherwise, we'd do that, right? And so up here, we want to probably get rid of this code. And in here, we would want to actually place an entity that is a tree on this square, right? And so whether or not those should actually be entities is a little hard to say. I'm going to say yes for now. So we're going to do something like this. And I'm going to try to put that entity on top here. So this code basically is probably what I would do. For placing an entity, I think. So honestly, I guess it's really just this. And later on, we would say, all right, So at the end of this, we would want to say, after you've placed this, like if we're supposed to place a tree, put a tree on top of it, I guess. Right? And so that is essentially this code here. It would be like, we need to get the tile, but we already know what the tile is, so we don't need that. We need to look to see whether or not we can grab the structural element out of it. It has to be, I guess, in this case. So that part, like we already know it's just the entity that we're placing here. So I don't think that that matters at all. So this is just this. And then here, where we do place entity, I think this is all good. All we really have to do is like create a tree here and add that. So I don't know what kind of tree we're necessarily going to do, right? But since we only have evergreens at the moment, we'll hard code it to that. Maybe snow ones. And if we go ahead and do that, all we really need here is just a straightforward add entity, I think. And we need to add one visible piece, which is just the tree, like the scenery of it. I think we can just call the creator function here. So we should be able to do just add obstacle. And that probably would do it. I think. So that was kind of a random thing to do. I'm not sure why that failed. So tile structure as entity and the ID gets him. So this, what is the complaint here? So somebody's null. But it should always be valid, right? This entity should be valid. So I suppose it's possible that the thing just doesn't have a traversable, which I suppose we should check. Why it wouldn't have one on a place where it's going to place a tree, though, that I'm not sure about. But we certainly can check. So in here we could say, hey, yeah, like... Well, no, I mean, how could it not have... I guess we'd have to say if it's open. Because it would have to, right? Am I missing something? I must have just been missing something simple there. Let's take a look. So it did not... It looks like it removed that from the set, though, which is a little bit weird. So, right, like for somehow that activity of saying if spec outdoors at place tree equals true, like made us not actually get any visible piece here at all, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Unless I'm missing something. So let me just verify. I want to make sure that this is actually the cause of that. No, so I ruined something else there. What did I do? I thought that was the only thing I changed, but evidently that is not the only thing I changed because I clipped out all of the stuff that was around the perimeter there accidentally. You can see it, the same thing happened here, right? So what did I accidentally change there that I didn't mean to? So we come through here and we say, are we on the boundary? Previously, what I said is if we're on the outside, then the answer is that we are not, right? So I guess the main change was that. Now, I thought on boundary only really ever did one thing. So it won't go in here. Ah, I see. But we do need a traversable there. So I guess on boundary is the wrong thing there. Because we do want to go in here, and we do want to specify that it's grass and that sort of stuff, right? So I guess we do need to do this. We want to leave this way. And we want to say, okay, yeah, like... we want to say something a little bit more specific here. So inside, we do this sort of stuff, and, all of this should still happen the way that it's happening. I guess we do call this. And then the only thing that happens is the place tree call. If we're in here, we want to make sure that we're not on a connection. So I think we want to do that, but otherwise we're okay. Right? I think that's all we really need. And so that should place our trees. I forgot. It also has to be on the actual boundary. So that's what we need that for. So we really need something like this. That's just a few too many trees is the problem. So let's see. Now that we've got some trees, we should also probably size them. They're going to be sized wrong, but there we go. So now there's at least a tree boundary. And normally, we're going to want to do a lot more stuff there to make this look like a forest and all kinds of other things. There's stuff that has to happen there. Let's go ahead. And also, why didn't the baby get placed there? That's another issue. I think we have, we've got a lot of work to do on this code because it doesn't really do anything right now, but we'll get there. So if we want these to be the right size, we need them to be, I don't know, something more like that, probably. Right? I think that's roughly what we're looking for. And that way, there's some big trees and stuff, and they look fine. That seems reasonable. We would probably want to vary that height a little bit as well. But it seems to work pretty well. The occlusion looks about right. I don't know if that center point is quite right though. Let me look at that a little bit more closely on something like here. That looks a little better. It's never quite right, because it's 2D trying to be 3D, right? So it's never quite right. But seems a little better. It may be a little left shifted as well. Now it looks a little right shifted. All right. Seems about right. All right. So I think that's sufficient for trees for now. And again, like in theory anyway, we should be able to just like change those parameters pretty easily. One thing that I'm not sure about is, so let's say that you have an entity here. I don't actually know if entities are tracked to any significant degree, but you know, like if we did do that, so that's camera, F1 is nothing. Not sure how I would want that to work, but just, you know, just to sort of show you what I'm thinking about here. Inside the editor, I don't really remember what we track, because it looks like we just use assets. We don't actually use entities, I think, anywhere, I think. And so it would be nice to have access to the entity itself as well, so that we could, you know, actually tweak some of those parameters. That's so that we could look at what happens when we change tags. You know what I'm saying? So that would be a nice thing to do. I just don't know. It's not. We only got 10 minutes left, so it's probably not something we should do now. But point being, so if we like inside the, I don't want this to accidentally get overwritten, by the way. What I would like to do is take a look at the code where we're actually placing this stuff. We could in here randomize this value. So instead of this, like, you know, we could do just to prove that we can. I think this would give us like an assortment of the trees that we had in there. In theory, I believe. It's damaged, right? Is the tag, is that the... Did we not put that in there? Guess I didn't put that in there. I didn't. So if I add that in and say that there's a damaged here, like so, then I should also be able to randomize on that. Previously, it looks like I wasn't actually marking that. And so now we should have some different trees, possibly. I don't actually know. Looks like it only picked the damaged ones there, but I'm not really sure why. That should have given us a random number between 0 and 1 for the snow and for the damaged. I guess the tag matching... Is the tag matching biased against 0 values? Because if so, that would be a problem for us. We have to do some work on our tag matching anyway. It's been on the to-do list forever. But just in terms of getting best match asset, I'm not sure. No, it doesn't look like it. Because the match vector would just be 0 there, and so the difference should be also 0. So I don't see why that's a problem. Well, let's find out. Also, I feel like the alignment is probably the same on all of these, so I can probably just do this, right? I don't need to like manually align each of those because they're gonna all be the same, I would assume. Anyway. So yeah, let's find out why that match is happening weird, because I assume all of those folks got different tag values, and so I feel like they should all have... I feel like they should all have different... picks there, and I'm not sure why. What you can see is it looks like it's biased against things that don't have the tag in them at all. So, in other words, things that have snow or things that have damaged are both matching like reasonably, but things that have neither are not matching, right? So it's like it's like refusing to consider something that doesn't have the channels that were requested at all. But I'm not sure why it would do that, because in theory, if those values are 0, that shouldn't actually give it much. But maybe it's because we're doing some kind of other thing there. But anyway, other than that, it looks okay. And you can see, like, yeah, tree evergreen never got picked, even though there should be some where these have less than point, each of these are less than 0.5, it should be the preferred, right, at that point. But it's not. And I'm not sure why. Looking at the asset picker, if the tag just doesn't... If the tag just doesn't exist at all, see, we're looping over the tags the asset actually has, right? And then what we do is say, all right, for each tag that the asset actually has, it gets like a better, it gets, the more things it can match, the better. So I guess the problem that we see here is that if you didn't have a tag at all, then you don't get any credit for it in the match. So even though you were closer, it doesn't count. And I'm not sure... That may be the way we want it to be, you know? Because we may want to control what the parameters are of the matching. So, like, I don't know. You know, one way to look at it would be you'd want to do this for things that were on there. And another way would be, well... Oops. Right? And that would allow you to say, like, okay, this all participates in the matching, so we're not trying to, like, eliminate anybody. But really, my feeling on that is it's probably just needs that we need to extend the tag system to know the difference between those two types of picking, right? And say, oh, all right, if we're going to pick amongst these, then you can tell me if a tag is something that should always count, whether you've got it or not, or whether it's something that should only count for people who actually have the tag, right? And I think those two need to be kind of handled separately. Anyway, that's fine for today, so I'll go ahead and go to Q&A here. Let me go ahead and... and while we're at it, I may, while I'm waiting for the questions to come in, we could also add lamp back in. So the thing that does the add lamp, this thing, if we actually did do add lamp, we could now actually place a lamp, which we don't really want to do because it's going to be stupid and weird. Because there's going to be so many stupid lamps, like you can see like just how much light there is. But what we could do is just put one in each room. So this on lamp, maybe it only does just this one for now. And so on here, it will place the lamp. Oops. All right. So if I said we had an on lamp now, then this same thing would happen, right? And this actually here could just be shared, probably. And so, I don't know, something like this. Where is that add lamp? Yeah. So add lamp would then become one of those like helper functions. So yeah, like much like add scenery or whatever it is. I know that was here somewhere, right? We just had it. Add obstacle, that's what it was. So we'd have like a gen create entity add lamp for now. And I don't know, it would be like, well, actually, I guess we don't really even need that because probably what you would do is just do this. And so that's the color of the lamp. Right. And this would just be the obstacle adder thingy, and we would say, well, it's a lamp. Right? Oops. So you don't really need an actual add lamp call because the add lamp is not actually having to do anything that the scenery doesn't do. It just sticks another one on there. Right? So this is like the light, the lamp light, let's say. So I think that would do it. I don't know that we need anything else there for that. And so now we could also have little lamps. Again, they're just kind of scattered around in a stupid way that doesn't make any sense. This has to look like that. And then I think we're good. Maybe. Who knows? So now we've got little lamps in there, and that's fine. So there's always lamps in the corner of every room for no reason. And, you know, we can align those a little bit better, too, if we want to. Let's get that up. So, yeah, if I go over here and look at that, and I want to make that seem like it's not totally wrong, it's probably like something like that, maybe. let's say. So now we've got the furniture lamp thing, and that's fine. And we still don't really know what we're going to do about the chairs. Oh, yeah. We got lamps outdoors. That's good. Probably shouldn't do that, huh? All right. Got any questions? What do we got for questions? When we'll be fixing the lighting, who knows when I want to. What's your favorite game of all time? Maybe Dance Dance Revolution? Is there going to be lighting affecting the shading of the entities? Yes. If so, would that lighting strength be uniform along the height of the entity within a square? No, we'd probably do a little bit more than that just to add some directionality to it. But, you know, it'll depend a little bit on how we end up wanting that to work when we get a little closer. When we get a little closer to wanting to deal with that. If you have normal maps, you can also do other stuff there, right? No, he's supposed to point in whatever direction you pointed him. So you can point him in any direction you want. There is an art bug right now where in the actual art file, the left, that's supposed to point left and that's supposed to point right, but the heads are reversed. So that's why there's a bug filed in the GitHub. When we get an art pack update, that will fix itself. But other than that, no. Like, you're supposed to be able to, like, punch backward and walk forward, so it's never supposed to change your facing direction. If that makes sense. Thoughts on creating some sort of weather system and or sun, noon, dusk, etc. system? Well, in our case, we have an inbound lighting direction. We haven't really played too much with it yet. But basically what happens there is you could, for free, probably just change that... I'm guessing to just make it be like day or night or whatever, you could just change that inbound lighting direction and that would probably give you most of what you want, right? If that makes sense. It seems like the tree graphics are for different seasons. I don't think the one evergreen is supposed to be damaged. Oh, so you think that that's... No, I think that's supposed to be damaged. I don't know, though. I agree that snow might be pointless. How will we do shadows? I don't know how we want to do shadows. We probably will just use some darkening of the region underneath for that. I'm not sure how we want to do that yet. I don't super miss them much, so I don't know how much I really care about anything other than darkening the area underneath. Seems probably fine. So yeah. But you're right, snow should probably not be there. Probably winter is better, so that it's more uniform. That seems probably like a good idea. So if we... Can I revert this buffer? No. So if I kill and then reload this and look for snow, maybe this should be winter. Oops. Winter. like that. And then maybe we could change the tags to not have that. So this tag is like deprecated now. We don't, well, I guess I can just well, since we reparse, I could just even change them, but I'm not going to. So I'm gonna remove that one sort of temporarily, and if we go condense the tags, I'll change it around, but for now we'll deprecate that tag and make it be winter instead. I do think that's a good idea. All right, looks like we're good. So I'm going to close it up. All right. Thank you everyone for joining me for an episode of Handmade Hero. It's my pleasure coding with you as always. If you want to follow along the series at home, you can always pre-order the game on handmadehero.org, and it comes with a source code. And we will try to, in the very near future, since we're kind of wrapping up the art import stuff, put up a complete set of the current art assets as they exist on my machine. That should help get us to a point where it's pretty easy for new people to just download and build their art assets as well, which is something we hadn't really been able to do in the past because it was kind of like piecemeal. So that'll be a nice thing to do too, and maybe next weekend we can get to that point because it seems like things are going pretty well at this point. We should be able to kind of do an art pack update at that point. That's about it. Until next week, have fun programming, and I'll see everyone on the internet. Take it easy, everybody.